Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild. We are going to bridge what seems like a totally insurmountable gap: the hard, empirical science of AI and robotics on one side, and the deeply mystical, ancient concept of reincarnation on the other. We're going to unpack a really fascinating conversation between psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove and AI pioneer Dr. Ben Goertzel, and we'll see how futuristic tech might actually give us a way to, well, scientifically test the unexplainable. Let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering magic versus science, the reincarnation data, the simplest explanation, the Dalai Lama's AI joke, testing the soul, and finally, a post-singularity reality. All right, starting with Section 1, magic versus science. So just think about our everyday reality for a second. If you could somehow take our modern achievements, sending humans to the moon, or just instantly FaceTiming someone across the planet, and show them to a Stone Age tribesperson, it would look completely insane, right? They'd think it was straight up magic, totally beyond the pale of reality. And honestly, that is exactly how AI expert Dr. Ben Goertzel used to view the whole concept of reincarnation. As a young, strict, scientific materialist, Goertzel basically mocked ancient texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. To him, the idea of a soul journeying after death, pure wishful thinking. He just assumed, you die, your body rots, your mind is totally gone, and people make up this rubbish about getting reborn because they simply can't handle the emotional weight of the end. But, as we know, a true scientist has to be willing to look at new data, no matter how weird or uncomfortable it might be. Which brings us to Section 2. The reincarnation data. Take a look at this number, 2,500. It's actually kind of staggering. The University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies maintains a massive formal database of over 2,500 meticulously documented cases of young children who just spontaneously remember past lives. So we're not talking about a handful of creepy urban legends here. This is a highly rigorous data set. What's truly mind-blowing about this is the sheer volume of empirical anomalies we're looking at. These aren't adults doing hypnotic regression, which, let's be honest, can be pretty unreliable. No, these are very young children having totally spontaneous memories. And researchers are finding a really high degree of historical matches based on the precise, incredibly specific details these kids give. Even more baffling, the physical correlates. We're talking about children with birthmarks that perfectly match the fatal wounds of a total stranger who died halfway across India. And interestingly enough, as scientists dig into this data and strip away all the cultural baggage, they actually find zero evidence supporting the traditional concept of punitive karma. So, no, you aren't necessarily being punished in this life for something bad you did in a past one. Moving right along to Section 3, the simplest explanation. When you sit down and really analyze these thousands of cases, philosopher Stephen Broad, who wrote Immortal Remains, lays out our options pretty clearly. We could just assume that literally everyone involved, the researchers, the kids, the parents, are all in on some impossibly complex, giant global conspiracy or shared delusion. But if we use Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest answer is usually the right one, well, the absolute simplest explanation here is that some form of the individual mind and personality actually survives physical death. Now, if you're wondering how a rigorous scientist could ever accept that, just look at physics for a second. Technically, we could explain quantum phenomena using a hideously complex tangled mess of classical physics equations. But we don't do that. We use quantum theory. Why? Because despite it being incredibly weird and completely counterintuitive, it's actually a much simpler explanation for the data we observe. It's exactly the same here. Just as accepting quantum mechanics is the simpler path in physics, accepting the survival of the mind is frankly the simplest categorical answer for this massive database of reincarnation phenomena. And that leads us to Section 4, the Dalai Lama's AI joke. So, in an interview a while back, the Dalai Lama made this really tongue-in-cheek comment. He was chuckling and said, perhaps when a computer programmer dies, he could be reincarnated inside an AI program, instead of inside a human being. And yeah, he was obviously half joking, but this kind of fanciful speculation actually forces us to ask a very serious scientific question. How in the world do we even define the physical space where a soul, or a conscious mind, might exist outside of the human body? To get around the culturally specific superstitions of religion and approach this as free thinkers, Dr. Goertzel suggests we could define the soul scientifically. He calls it a pattern space, or a eurocosmos. I want you to think of it like a broader, theoretical metacosmos that exists entirely outside of our standard four-dimensional space-time continuum. Basically, it's a framework that suggests our minds have a physical anchor in the brain, sure, but there's also a non-physical aspect residing out there in this broader pattern space. Let's look at Section 5, Testing the Soul. Looking ahead to the coming decades, Goertzel hypothesizes this absolutely fascinating three-step process. First, we scan the dynamics and structure of a living human brain. Then, step 2, we upload that mind into a digital artificial general intelligence, an AGI format. And step 3, the real kicker, we test to see if that digital copy creates what's known as morphic resonance. Essentially, we're asking, does that non-physical aspect of your mind, the part hanging out in the extra-physical pattern space, suddenly connect and resonate with your new digital mind upload? To put that into perspective, we already have plenty of anecdotal data showing this sort of telepathic coupling, a kind of spooky transference between identical twins who share identical biology. But an upload of your mind isn't just a twin, right? It's an exact, flawless digital duplicate of your specific consciousness. Because of that exactness, we might witness an extremely high telepathic coupling between your original biological mind and your digital upload. We're talking a connection way stronger than anything we've ever documented between twins or even theoretical human clones. Think about what this means. By being able to copy a mind, turn it off, flip it back on 100 years later, or even copy it into multiple locations at once, we literally turn reincarnation from a vague anecdotal mystery into a hard experimental science. Future researchers could manipulate, copy, and measure conscious transference across totally different mediums. I mean, does this spooky transference only happen in post-quantum gravity computers? Does it work in standard digital machines or only in engineered biological wetware? For the first time ever, we will actually have the tools to measure the soul. Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, a post-singularity reality. Just take a step back and look at the crazy rapid advancement of our technology. In the 1990s, we had very narrow, highly specific, primitive AI. Today, in the 2020s, our AI is getting better, but it's still relatively primitive, kind of like the Wright brothers' first airplane. But jump to the 2050s, and we're staring down the barrel of genuine artificial general intelligence and the very real dawn of mind uploading. And as we push toward the 2080s, we're talking about superhuman, engineered minds that will inevitably probe the very fabric of spacetime itself. Ready or not, we're going to be forced to confront these esoteric issues head-on. And guys, here is where it truly bends the mind. Drawing on the singularity theories of Terence McKenna, Dr. Goertzel points out that these future superhuman minds are likely going to probe that extra-physical pattern space so deeply that linear causality, the basic idea that a cause must always happen before an effect, might just completely cease to matter. We enter this wild realm of a causal entanglement, where entanglement doesn't give a damn about the forward movement of time. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. As we race forward at breakneck speed to build artificial general intelligence, we always assume causality flows in a straight line, that we are simply creating the future. But what if? What if the superhuman, telepathically entangled minds that we will eventually create are actually reaching back through that pattern space right now, pulling us toward them? Something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning the nature of our reality.